Welcome to Rethink Reality, the podcast where we challenge the walls of our everyday assumptions and explore the infinite possibilities of meaning and invention. I'm your host, Don Allen Stevenson III, creative technologist and creative AI research lead at Asteria and Moon Valley. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Taryn Southern. She's a pioneer at the intersection of neurotech and human culture, filmmaker whose work spans implantable brain computers, interfaces in the latest of transcranial stimulation, and an anthropologist who's fascinated by how our emotional and cultural scaffolding shapes everything from marriage to markets. Taryn's deep dive into how we construct and deconstruct our shared realities has taken her from everywhere from neuroscience labs all the way to Silicon Valley's boardrooms. Together, we'll unpack why meaning making is the only true escape hatch from the systems that we have mistaken as truths, and how, as technology accelerates, we might reinvent our very sense of what is real. Welcome, Taryn, to the Rethink Reality podcast. What is one big idea you're exploring right now?
It's an idea that is perfect for this podcast, Rethinking Reality. And it's just this idea that everything in our present reality, all of our systems, capitalism, productivity, time, like it's all, we confuse them for truth. And the trap is that these constructs shape our life and our choices. And we're so often unconsciously aware of them. And so the sort of escape hatch of this is through meaning making, how we chase reality, how we manufacture reality. So I don't know, this is a very large idea. I've sort of known this idea or had this idea in my consciousness for a very long time and been aware of it, but it's like, what do we actually do to circumvent?
What's a construct that a lot of people today just take as a truth, but it's actually not truth? It's just a construct. Or actually, wait, is construct and truth the same thing?
No, they're not necessarily the same thing. Construct is like the system, the structure of which we assume is truth.
Got it.
And so, like everything that we've created culturally is a construct. So,
Right.
like marriage, this idea that two people should get married and sign a contract together and be together for the rest of their lives. Beautiful construct. Maybe it's a good construct that we all want to accept, but it's totally a made-up human construct.
Right. And humans, we love that, right?
This idea that we all need to be financially incentivized in order to create and build and progress and there's all of these incentive structures underneath capitalism that now we're all tied to without ever kind of thinking, is this the best system in our reality?
Why do we feel the need to make them? Like if you could, because it seems like they're pretty arbitrary, right? Like, so why do we do that? Why do we keep?
They're super arbitrary. I mean, on some level, I think that there is an art to the constructs that we've built. Many of our constructs have improved. Like one might say that capitalism is better than fascism, and that we've kind of gone through this experience over thousands of years of trying on different constructs and then looking and seeing, well, which one actually survives the test of time. So it's not
nice. It's
not completely different than Darwin's theory of the fittest. So maybe the fittest ideas do survive, but what's happening now is we have technology moving so fast. And that is impacting all of our beliefs, all of our cultural norms at rapid pace. And our institutions and our systems cannot move fast enough to actually reorient to the ideas that come out of it. And so I think we're going to be in a really tricky situation soon where we're face to face with all of these constructs that have built into our reality. And we're saying, wait a second, is this the world that we really want to live in? And how do we crack out of some of these places faster, than what we're able to do?
So, I mean, that's super exciting, right? Or a mixture. Fearful?
It's a mixture. Well, I mean, I actually think it's mostly exciting. It's just that you get bogged down in how does this actually play out? Our systems are very, very complex, and it's just very hard to make change. And United States is one of the places that sort of moves faster than a lot of other countries, but it feels like it's snail pace here. And Silicon Valley is definitely used to moving fast and breaking things, and they get in trouble for that sometimes,
right.
They get in trouble for that mentality sometimes. But
I'm
curious, like, what do you...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
What kind of systems do you see that are poised to break sooner than they perhaps thought?
Okay. I think all the systems are going to collapse on themselves right now.
Yeah.
Just because we've never had the speed like we have now. Like, it's fun, but also scary, depending on the hour, honestly. Like
Yeah.
from 1 hour, I'm like, wow, the future is so bright. And then an hour later, I'm like, oh my God, the future is over. And it's like, these are
Ping
like
ponging.
ping pong. Yeah. So I seek in these conversations with people that I think are actively rethinking reality, folks like yourself. I seek, maybe selfishly, how are you approaching the infinite realities and the infinite ways that we might explore meaning? So you said using meaning was something to kind of steer the scaffolding.
Yeah, it's something to steer the scaffolding. And I say all this as someone who doesn't believe that there's actually any inherent meaning,
Ooh.
which sounds really dark. And for a while, I actually felt it kind of was. I took a look at everything that was sort of going on in the world, and I could see how any one situation, person, event, political idea, it could be looked at through 20 different lenses of meaning. And all of those people will say that their meaning is the right meaning. And the reality, I think, is that, like, whether you believe in God or not, whether you're agnostic or atheistic, the world sort of happens there, and what happens to you, whether you like it or not, regardless of whatever meaning you place on it. And so I think the power is almost knowing that there's no inherent meaning and yet choosing to imbue meaning anyway, because that is actually what makes humans different from any other species, is our ability to meaning make. And it's the meaning making that allows us to build new
Mm.
things, new ideas, new structures, new systems. And so perhaps it's through our meaning making that we create something that collectively has more meaning than the meaninglessness that exists just inherently.
Well, I
I don't know
love
if that
this.
makes sense.
I love first off, I've never heard the term together, meaning making. I love that. Did
Mm.
you make up that term? Like
No, I
the two
definitely didn't.
together? Oh,
I don't know who I've read it from and where I've read it, but I've definitely read it from different thinkers.
wow, meaning making. And I
Yeah.
like that it's active, because sometimes I would hear
Yeah.
the term meaning and I kind of just assume that it just
Yeah.
is. But when you
Right.
say meaning making, that suggests that meaning is actually not just it is
Yeah.
intention. It's
Yeah.
created.
Yeah. 100%. And so once we can see the meaning making clearly for what it is, then we get to start rejecting the parts of it that we know no longer make sense or serve us. And
Mm.
then we get to invent our own meaning making frameworks. And then I think life just becomes more of an art rather than just an algorithm. Because right now we're kind of all living as an algorithm
Where?
on planet Earth. I mean, if you can imagine the universe almost like a human brain with all the little neurons sending all of the little pieces of information back and forth, you can almost view human beings as their own little subset of that crazy intricate neuronal system. Like, we're all just kind of, we have inputs and outputs, inputs and outputs. I eat sugar, I feel tired. I I drink too much, I feel bad the next day and wake up late. It's all input output behavior. And you can almost run a massive LLM model, prediction model, taking in all of these different, we're not there yet, but once we get to quantum,
Oh,
it's hard not to see us as cogs in a machine. So when we stop and we get really conscious about our choices, how we're showing up in the machine, what we're doing, what we're thinking, what words are coming out of our mouth, all the different, I suppose, representations of our
right.
internal world, of this internal machine. I get really interested in what could we build that could be so extraordinarily different and beautiful and thoughtful and imaginative if we all actually just become consciously aware of these underlying invisible systems governing our behaviors and our incentives.
It kind of reminds me of like your macro and microbiome,
Yeah.
where it's like there's these millions of units that are operating with laws and rules and inputs and outputs, operating kind of in the background, and they somehow dictate like our behavior, our desires, and they're inside of all of us. People's biomes kind of dictate a lot of, and we're learning so much more science of like, you know what does your gut biome mean? What is it like for being, if you were one of those proteins in there in the gut biome, what's your experience like? And you're just like, oh, I process energy, I turn calories, and that's like my purpose. But like, if you put a trillion of those together, all of a sudden you have a human that operates and like, wonders about like what's going to happen in Netflix new season or something, how does the microbiome translate to the abstractions that us humans get to benefit from? Like we can contemplate meaning, but like I don't know, do you think any protein in your body could process meaning? Like if we took one protein of yours and asked it.
I don't personally believe that, but that's only because of my very limited knowledge of, I suppose, what proteins can do. I mean, proteins, DNA, cells, they all get sets of instructions from our body, right? They all have
Oh, dang.
instructions that pass on, and our choices, our beliefs, the meaning making that results in certain behaviors, then can shift those instructions over time because of you know the way that our genetics and our bodies work. They are responsive to our environmental choices. So in a way, they are impacted by our meaning making, but I don't think that they have any ability to actually meaning make. But I am just really fascinated by the ontologics of meaning making and how it is informed by all these different pieces. I mean, you could argue that like Taryn with one microbiome that is
Uh-huh.
fed a diet of, say, McDonald's over 30 days, and Taryn with another healthy microbiome that's fed a bunch of macronutrition, will have two entirely different meaning making systems because my brain is impacted by those ins outs. I mean, as a woman, we learn very quickly that we actually have two minds. We have our premenstrual cycle mind, and we
Hmm.
have the mind in the rest of the cycle. And we are not the same human. We are going to
Hmm.
think differently about the world around us. We are going to be more sensitive. There's going to be so many different areas of how I interpret meaning differently just because of the biological hormonal inputs in that week. So I don't see meaning as fixed. I see it as ever changing. And I'm not so sure that we have a lot of I'm not so sure that we have a lot to say in changing our meaning making structures, but I want to believe that we have a little bit. I want to believe that we have
Mm.
just enough to consciously nudge ourselves in new directions in spite of our own prescriptional body, in spite of the instructions our body's giving us.
I love that framework. I mean, I think it's like we kind of need, we talk about scaffolding. So if there's cultural scaffolding, I think you mentioned before something around emotional infrastructure. So how do
Hmm.
we actually, what does emotional infrastructure actually look like?
Yeah. So I think we were talking about this in the context of everyone's talking about how to build technology infrastructure right now. And I am really curious about what happens if the world were to hyper focus on emotional infrastructure. And I suppose what I
Whoa.
mean by that is building collective emotional regulation, self awareness, and nervous system resilience. Because I think these are some of the most important skills for being human. I certainly didn't learn it when I was a child. I didn't start learning this stuff until I was in my mid to late 20s. And by then, I feel like so much of it is too late because you're so hardwired. These nervous system patterns are so deeply ingrained. And these are the patterns that cause people to react, that cause people to operate from a place of wounding rather than a
Mm.
place of healing. And we're accelerating so rapidly through this new world that brings up all of these massive ethical implications and issues that humans have to contend with. And I am concerned that if we don't build the kind of collective emotional resiliency and compassion, we have to add compassion into there. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know how we engage in a proper dialogue and get through and create some of the new systems necessary to get to the other side. And also, like, I just want to see humans stop fighting, really.
Mhm.
It's really just getting in the way of everyone kind of building towards something better.
Yeah.
So I think part of that is healing trauma and learning our nervous systems, learning this like crazy ancient system that we were built with, and ways that you can kind of rewire it a bit more in our favor.
I mean,
What
we
do you
got
think
like,
about that?
well, there was a quote that comes to mind is that like the main issue that humanity has today is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology.
Hmm.
So it's like if our hardware is not that different from the Paleolithic era, and
It's
yet we're
true.
thrown into these worlds where we have to like contend with institutions that are kind of outdated, and then technology that is, I mean, honestly, like godlike at this time. I look at some of the Greek gods, the messenger god Hermes. His power was to kind of send a instant message across any distance. And now it's like I I ignore
We did
phone
it.
calls. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
like it's not even that godlike anymore in the sense I'm like, oh, it's like it's spam. But like a few, centuries ago, that was only the domain of a god who could
Right.
conjure up the ability to do instant communication. Now we're in this video call across vast distances, and it's
Right.
almost like teleportation, and it's kind of like, it's a Zoom call, it's a video call.
Yeah.
So was this intentional that we would be in this situation, or is it
Yeah.
just circumstance? Like, is it
Yeah.
rolling of a dice? And
Yeah.
every day I'm trying to, I want to, similar to you, kind of believe that I can nudge the dice by my intention. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I look at some quantum studies and I'm like, oh, do you have a lot of influence of the dice?
Yeah.
I feel like some religions attempted to build infrastructure for managing people's emotions and saying, and
Mm-hmm.
almost creating meaning making, creating laws, saying these
Mm-hmm.
are the laws, and if we live by these laws, then it regulates people. Is is religion a one of the ways that people do emotional infrastructure? Is there others?
Absolutely. Religion is probably the more popular if you're talking about this in terms of just population and time. There's many systems and beliefs that religion puts forward that help provide a sense of comfort, a sense of, I think there's so many people that wouldn't be able to get through life if they didn't believe that there was really something better for them on the other side, or that the universe was working for them, not against them. I tend to think of those as more clever phrases, but I also know that when I just simply believe the universe is working for me, I do feel better. And therefore, my actions are more in alignment with this future version of self that is better. And so, actually, I do end up creating a
Wow.
space where the universe is working for me. So,
That's
it's
so
not that
cool.
I think that the meaning is actually true. The meaning is not true. The meaning is made up. The
Okay.
meaning being the universe is working for you,
Oh, got it.
not against you. I believe that is just an inherently meaningless statement. However, my belief in that statement now causes me to act in alignment with that statement versus if I had the belief that the universe is always out to get me. My actions are going
Oh
to
my
reflect that.
God.
So I'm going to create this world, right? So when my hippie friends who I love so dearly tell me the universe is looking out for you, everything's going to turn out okay, I always can't help but go like a little bit, because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that is not a true statement. That is a belief. And
Ah,
yet I am so grateful thank you so much for your belief that should be my truth. And knowing enough about neuroscience and behavioral psychology, the best thing I could do for myself is to adopt that belief with wholehearted enthusiasm. And that is why sometimes I think that like people who don't question beliefs, so long as the belief is a positively framed and natured, people who don't spend a lot of time questioning beliefs are generally happier. Because they
oh,
buy the
interesting.
belief, they say that's a great belief, and then the belief starts to work. It's a positive reinforcement loop. It starts working for them. And then if they never get to a place to like deep questioning, then they're just like, great, yeah, I live in this space where the universe is always working for me.
It's
Whereas
almost like a
like
blissful ignorance in a sense, right?
a
Like
little
if you
bit,
have
yeah,
belief, then you don't have to worry about anything.
that's right. That's right.
It's all taken care
But
of.
talk to anyone who's been through. There are traumas in my life that I would have preferred to not endure. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, I have learned things on the other side, but there's also a point at which you say, okay, I'm done learning the lesson. I don't need to learn anymore. Like, I now just want to live peacefully and be able to do lovely, nice things for other people. And, but I don't have the space to, because I'm still dealing with the capital T trauma. Like, I don't necessarily think that all bad stuff that happens to us is a gift. And, talk to a Holocaust survivor, or talk to anyone. I mean, many of them actually would say that they've come out stronger, but I don't know that they would have actually wanted to go through a harrowing experience like that to get there.
I wonder about that sometimes too, because similar to you, the most traumatic things I've gone through have been the things that I felt like shaped me the best. I learned the most. But then at the same
Yeah.
time, like I wouldn't wish that upon an enemy. I don't want them to
Yeah.
have to go through that. It would be horrible, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, so is that just humans trying to make sense of random
I think
circumstance?
so. I think so, personally. Also, I think that this is a sort of an interesting self-selecting conversation because, like, I see you as someone who always, regardless of your circumstances, is like a fighter and a optimist, and you always find the lemonade and the lemons. And as a result, like, you have created a better world for yourself. There's a million other ways that could have gone, right? It does make me curious, like, what is done with maybe 30% less trauma? Would you still have had some of the really big insights? You know, maybe like a few of the things were a little easier for you.
I
We
would
don't
say
know.
no.
We will never know the
Oh, right.
answer to that, right? Like, we'll never know. But it's like,
Right.
I think about this in regards to some of my stuff, and I'm like, if you have too much trauma over and over and over again, you get bitterness, and you get like a kind of, there's a lot of people who just like too much bad luck over and over and over reinforces something for them that causes despair and depression and helplessness. And there's a lot of people out there like that, and some of it is so even not their, it's not their fault at all. It's like our systems and how hard it is to get out ahead if you've been knocked down a few times.
Right.
It's really challenging. So anyway, I guess I think the belief is so powerful and so important. And as someone who's like a sort of hyper scientific, pragmatic person, I can understand why for a lot of people the belief isn't enough. I get it. Like, I get it. And I guess I would impart on them, it's okay. You don't actually have to believe it. You don't have to believe it's true, but if you're willing to play make believe for just long enough, if you're willing to put your make believe hat on and pretend and just say, I know this is ridiculous, but I'm going to believe this because I know that by saying it to my brain enough times, I will actually start to create new neural pathways, which will then cause my behaviors to shift in tiny little directions that will move me in a more positive direction. And this is not woo woo. This is just behavioral science.
Neuroscience. You can see it. So,
Yeah.
question on that: when someone is invoking a belief in their brain, if they were under a brain scanner, is it a similar area of the brain that lights up? Is it a similar pattern? Is it a similar blood flow? What is like the physiological shape of belief?
That is such a cool question, and I wish I had my PhD in neuroscience so that I could tell you the answer. But that's such a
I
cool
assumed you
question.
had one.
I don't know. No, I don't. I've been working in neurotech now for 7 years, but I come from I'm actually an anthropology was my background. So the study of human culture over time, which was absolutely fascinating. So you can ask me about monkeys and rituals, but no, in terms of the actual like what's happening in the brain at that time, I don't know. I imagine that it would be similar to people who are thinking about religion. But no, my specialty is now implantable brain computer interfaces. So I know a lot about how we can connect the human brain to a digital device and what's going on under the hood of the car, so to speak, when that's going on. There's a lot of Black Mirror questions I get. But no, I sadly can't answer your MRI.
Here to give you some clear mirror questions.
Yes.
Because that's my,
That's
my
your speed.
bias. Yeah. Like, I was like going to ask, like, if someone was experiencing trauma, is there a shape in the brain that you could see and that a neural implant could address a trauma physically?
I would love to see a neural implant address trauma. I mean, we already have other neural technologies that address trauma, like TDCS, transcranial direct stimulation. Ultrasound is also being used to address trauma. And basically what happens is you're just supplying the brain with focused electrical activity. Because when we are traumatized, when you're depressed, when you're anxious, you show either elevated or minimized activity in various parts of the brain. And so you can actually start to modulate that activity, turning on neural circuits that haven't been activated in a long time. And people are like seeing really incredible results for depression and anxiety using TDCS and also focused ultrasound and some of the other technologies.
Those are external too, right? Like, or is that internal?
No chip required. No chip required. I mean, there are some studies on deep brain stimulation, which is an actual chip that goes into the brain and it stimulates from the inside. out.
Okay.
Most Parkinson's patients have them because you have to get into the motor center of the brain in order to stop tremor. But one of the best, I'd say, effects of these Parkinson's DBS chips is that the patient doesn't just end up with a no tremor. They also usually end up with a kind of renewed sense of self, like a lot more motivation, a lot more drive, a lot more optimism, because those neural circuits that govern movement also impact our mood.
Oh my God. So if you help, oh wow, you're blowing my mind. So improving someone's motor function in their brain, then it's not just going to be their motor ability, but also ambition and
Reports of Parkinson's patients who get the implant and it ends up saving their marriage. One woman that I filmed in my movie, I made a documentary on the subject a couple of years ago, and she was an artist prior to her Parkinson's. And then of course her Parkinson's destroyed her ability to paint. So that was really devastating for her. But her favorite aspect of the implant is not the fact that she can move her hands without any tremor. It's the fact that she's just so much happier. She's like, I'm so much happier, and has like a lot of energy now too, which is interesting.
wow.
So, our brains are this interesting amalgamation of electrical activity, biological activity. We've got cells and proteins and neurotransmitters, and they're all kind of working concurrently. And if you attack any one of those areas, you can get some pretty unique and robust impacts on the overall feeling of self.
Wow. So I'm so curious, like, what do you think a person is?
And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier on about people just kind of being this set of very complex instructions, and
Yeah.
you could argue that we all are just this incredibly complex set of instructions coming from our proteins and our neurotransmitters and our DNA and the electrical activity that's moving between the two. It's like endless, and we are just at the very beginning of understanding our bodies and understanding how to work with our bodies, modulate, hack, whatever the word may be, to send us in a more optimal direction.
Okay, so it kind of goes back to, if a person could be just a amalgamation of complexity and energy flow, electrons, proteins, is there a world where AI could be a complex collection of instructions? Will it have the ability to create meaning?
Well, AI is already creating meaning as long as the human says that there's meaning in what they're delivering to us, then it's creating meaning, right?
Okay.
The question is whether or not it's conscious. And I think we all at this point mostly believe that AI is not yet conscious, but it's still delivering meaning. And I mean, the meaning's powerful, right? Like, I think the more people are using AI, the more they also come into contact with the tenuousness of their own meaning making games, because you can use AI and all of a sudden get a reframe in 2 seconds of like, oh, this is how you should rethink this for your life. And you're like, wow, I didn't even think about that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Do you think if there was no person on Earth and there were still AIs, can meaning still exist?
That's a great question. No person on Earth, I still don't believe meaning exists. I don't believe meaning exists with humans or without humans.
Oh, sorry. Let me rephrase it. Meaning making. Can there be meaning making if there's no human to interpret it?
That's a great question. I think, I guess we have to then ask ourselves, is meaning making something that only exists if we can feel that and sense that we're meaning making and consciously aware that we're meaning making? Or is the 2D meaning making of AI enough? Because the AIs could certainly decide to go out and build things based on their meaning making generations.
Their instructions, I could give
they're generating meaning in an inherently meaningless world. Okay, sure. I will, for now, without a lot of thought on this, and I'm totally willing to change my mind, I will say that yes, the AIs will continue to meaning make in a society without humans.
Sweet.
Even though they are of themselves like not conscious.
Wow. So I guess, do we even need consciousness to have this sense of meaning? Or is that just
that throws a wrench in my argument. Maybe we do, and I bet you could probably talk me out of my argument with that exact wrench.
Okay. Split brain patients.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you have someone with a split brain, I think it's the corpus callosum, they cut that tissue. There was reports that the right half and left half of the brain have different conscious experiences. And they
Yeah.
tested this by omitting senses from one side and only showing one side of the brain information and seeing how the human would react. What is that? That whole situation there.
It's so crazy, right? There's a great book by Oliver Sacks called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Have you read this book?
No, I never even heard of
Okay,
this.
it's fantastic. You will love this book, Don. This is totally a Don book, and anyone who hasn't read it, please go read it. It's about this fascinating part of our brains. If you destroy one part of the brain, you will discover that there's like a whole new brain that exists. So when the two parts are not concurrently working as a whole, like they almost become a new entity, if you will.
Okay.
And if you separate them, now you've got two distinct entities. And so Oliver Sacks, he's a famous neuroscientist, and he wrote a collection of real life stories about real life patients that he saw who had one half of their brain had been destroyed. There's one guy had been electrocuted, one guy had been like shot or blown up on one side of his brain. And the kinds of, unfortunately, I can't remember because it's been so long, but the kinds of stories that you hear out of these people kind of dismantles all of our identity related beliefs. We think that like we have a soul and this soul is a certain way. And maybe if a soul is just consciousness or just presence, maybe that still works within the Oliver Sacks frame of thinking. But if you think that like your soul is attached to a certain personality or that your personality is like, it's you. It's like, no, it's not. Like we could destroy the concept of you in 2 seconds with some very, dark situation, a
Right.
surfboard getting nailed into your head. I don't know. Now all of a sudden part of you exists and that part of you is going to be fairly unrecognizable. So we think about all the people who've had traumatic brain injury, football players, right? Athletes, if you've been in car accidents, like you don't know the various ways that jostling of the brain has impacted even minor personality characteristics.
Wow. And also like just the
serial
imprints.
killers as a whole, almost all of them show major signs of traumatic brain injury. This is now known. You put them through a scanner and there's a whole book on this. How many of them had traumatic brain injury when they were children?
Wait,
It's
really?
wild. Yeah. There's also a commonality with serial killers. Many of them are schizophrenic. Many of them will show like signs of, not schizophrenia. But although that's a common characteristic as well, but many of them will show signs of split personality disorder. They have multiple personalities. And because there's a whole book on this as well, it's fantastic. And because many of them were not aware that this was a mental illness or even a thing, like they just accepted this weird part of themselves and didn't bring it up in court even.
Oh my goodness.
So,
It's like we didn't have the language to describe that at the time of when the reports were happening.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
God, did you ever watch that show Severance by any chance?
So good. I only saw the first few episodes, but it was fantastic. I need to finish watching it.
I won't ruin anything for you, but
Okay.
after you finish watching it, I would love to have you back on here to analyze whatever because you work on brain-computer interfaces. You work in implants. That's about implants. They do a more darker lens with it. But the question I want to ask for you is those split personalities that you saw in the first episode, I think they highlight that. Is that kind of like the idea, like the concept of you falls apart the moment you accept that there could be a severed version of you that is still the same hardware, still the same body, but now your software expression is different?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think a lot of times people with split personalities will black out. Their main personality blacks out, doesn't remember what the other personality did. And it all stems from childhood. Most of it stems from childhood trauma. Like really severe childhood trauma where the dissociation occurs. The person has to literally at 3 or 4 years old escape into another mind. And they build this whole second area in the brain. It's like a compartment of the brain that's not attached to the rest of the brain. And it builds this new personality. And that personality gets activated with certain triggers, physically outside triggers. And then boom, now they're the other person. And that person stays separate, which protects the other brain from this incredibly dark reality. These serial killers, like once they figure this out, so many of them say, like, it wasn't me that killed this person. It was Sam. It was so-and-so. And Sam is the kid that was like terribly abused when he was a baby. So you end up like watching, there's a documentary on this with one of the top psychotherapists in the world who has worked with a lot of these serial killers. And you kind of come out with such sadness for the human condition and realizing like hurt people hurt people. That's really how this works. All experience many hurts and many traumas, and we go and hurt other people when we're triggered by that thing that once hurt us. And until you do the healing work, it just keeps kind of going in a loop. Like, we're all human. So that's an experience all of us can identify with. I think what's unique about these serial killers, or some of the extreme stories on the edges of reality, is the trauma was so severe and so chronic that their brain actually created a second brain within a brain for a new person to exist.
That's how bad the trauma was. They needed a separate person to process it.
That's right. To actually continue living day to day.
Wow.
So it was like, it's such an interesting survival mechanism of the brain.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, I wonder, wow. Do you think this occurs for all mammals?
I don't know. That's a great question. No idea.
Because they have very similar brain areas.
It would make sense if my cat has that, because she's really like two different cats.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is the other personality coming out?
But can they choose which one? Like, do you think your cat's like, I'm going to be
Snaps
the other
on.
cat? Yeah.
No, I think she gets triggered and then now she's scaredy cat.
Wow. That's so cool. We can be, it seems like humans can be many.
Yeah.
Many in one. It's like one
totally
in all, or all in one. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a mixture.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, kind of jumping around a little bit, I want to ask about predictions that you might have for robots. So what is your prediction for robots in intimate daily rituals?
I'm so excited for this question. So my feeling on robots, I think in the next 5 years, I think virtually everyone who can afford one will either have an at-home robot cooking, cleaning, organizing, or they will be on a wait list for one. I mean, I really think the only thing that will be problematic is simply supply chain and how they can make them fast enough. And I don't know. I got into an argument about this with a friend of mine who's in venture, and she thought, no, it'll be way longer than that. People don't want robots in their homes. And I was like, have you tried a Waymo? Because everyone was terrified to get into a Waymo. And then they get into a Waymo, and about 30 seconds in, they say, this is a lot better experience. And now we're in an autonomous driving car. There is no human. And I think people forget how quick we are to assimilate to a new technology. And it's like, if it's useful, we love it. And so to me, the idea of never having to sweep my floors, put away my dishes, do my laundry, the ability to have very healthy, clean food prepared in a delicious way, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so I can just be thinking about higher order things. I mean, sign me up. I will sell my car tomorrow and get an at-home robot. That's how much I want one.
They're coming. And I think your timeline is spot on, by the way.
I'm still figuring out where I want to be and where I want to spend time online. And I'm also trying to reduce my own scroll time. It's like a never-ending task, but I do like Instagram the most. It's currently where I go to share videos that will help people use AI to reclaim their dreams and live more efficient, productive, happier lives. So yeah, I would say that's the place to do it.
What's your Instagram account, if you could spell it out for our audio listeners?
My name, Taryn, Taryn, Southern, Southern.
Thank you so much for jumping on here. I really appreciate it. And
it is so great to see you, as always. Yeah.
Likewise. And we'll chat again. Enjoy your the rest of the day.
You too.